So I think there's a couple. First and foremost, voluntary carbon markets are getting much, much bigger. So in the last year, we've already seen them go from around 400 million to a little bit over $1 billion in 2021. So first and foremost, way more primarily corporates are actually coming into voluntary carbon markets to take some form of climate action. The second big macro trend we're seeing is the diversification of people's participation in voluntary carbon markets. So what does that mean? First and foremost, like the old version of carbon markets used to be primarily focused on what are called nature-based solutions. So that's compensating or removing carbon with something like reforestation or afforestation, or maybe something with like a mangrove in a form of blue carbon. But now we're seeing more and more corporates allocate capital towards what we call frontier negative emissions technologies. So these are technologies like direct air carbon capture or enhanced weathering, which are human engineered solutions that again achieve the same goal of removing carbon. But the difference there is that's a chemical process that humans can control, rather a nature-based solution is primarily limited by the rate at which nature proceeds at. So you can only remove carbon as fast as the tree grows in the case of reforestation, but in direct air carbon capture, it's typically limited by energy. So those are kind of the two big macro movements we're seeing. Carbon markets as a whole getting much, much larger, but they're also getting more fragmented. So I'd say there's probably three kind of key elements. The first is we just need more capital to be put into voluntary carbon markets. Again, earlier I said they've tripled in size, but they're not even 1% of the size they need to be in order to hit our climate goals. So first and foremost, we need to be putting a lot more capital, both in the form of project finance, but as well as transacting in carbon markets to help these markets actually scale. That's kind of what we spend most of our time thinking about at Patch. As an API marketplace, we're primarily helping these technologies commercialize in some way or another. So how do we actually get more capital to these folks doing this great work? The second piece is all about standardization. So the way we help with that at Patch is primarily as you scale a market, if things are not standardized, if the foundation isn't strong, if like the appropriate data isn't in place, so the necessary verification standards, things are going to get really out of hand when things become 10, 100 times larger. And so the second piece is making sure we really have the right data and checks and balances in place to make sure as we scale, the scaling is healthy rather than a little bit more chaotic. And then the third element is actually coupling some form of carbon removal or climate action with everyday activities through software. And again, as an API first business, that's kind of what we're spending all of our time on. Our kind of thesis is in order to get 1 billion people to actually take action, we have to make so that they don't actually have to take action. The action is taken on their behalf for them. And that's going to be through some sort of automation of software.